There is no racial justice without a functioning democracy, and there is no such thing as a functioning democracy without racial justice. In our country, they're inextricably linked. Goes back to the founding of the country, right? That the question of democracy in the United States has been tied to whether or not we are going to be racially just. And so, in that way, for us, as we think about the practice of democracy, we know that public schools were built around the idea that there can be no meaningful democracy unless we have shared education. That at its core, that public schools were actually built out of this idea that it is in our public schools where we get to learn and practice democracy, that we get to learn pluralism, what it means to work with people who are different from us. And yet, our history is steeped in, from the outset, this idea that we weren't really going to practice it. And so, the moment we find ourselves in is, in fact, just the reality of that history. Public education in America was loved up until the 1970s. There was no questions about whether or not our schools were effective. It was actually seen as the most important institution in our country. But as soon as we desegregated our schools, the truth of the matter is from that day forward, we've been on a steady march about, well, maybe we should privatize our schools. And have no doubt that with visions like Heal Together, the work we see happening around the country in response to this moment, that the possibility is actually making real what has always been the promise,